You never get a second chance at a first impression. And as hard as we try, we don't always make the first impression that we intend. During a visit to the mental asylum, a visitor asked the director what the criterion was that defined whether or not a prospective patient should be institutionalized. The director said this: "We fill up a bathtub, then we offer the person a teaspoon, a teacup, and a bucket, and ask him or her to empty the bathtub." Said, "Oh, I get it. So a normal person would use the bucket because it's bigger than the spoon or the teacup." The doctor said, "No. A normal person would pull the plug. Do you want a bed near the window?" One of the things we're going to talk about tonight, and I'll draw your attention to this crudely drawn circles, concentric circles on the board. We're going to be talking about positive impression all the way around, and we will start very narrow with Thessalonica, and then we'll see the circle expand to Macedonia. And then in 11 and 12, it's going to expand to, for lack of better phrase, outsiders. And that's kind of the focus of these four verses. A lot of times, Paul's writing goes from general to narrow. In this passage on love, it starts very specific and it kind of mushrooms out as it goes. But all three of these have unique dynamics. And we'll get into that as we go through this brief passage tonight. Could I have someone read for me verses 9 through 12? We'll just read it all and then start breaking it down.
Sure, I'll read.
You're the man. Bless you.
Now about your love for one another, we do not need to write to you. For you yourselves have been taught by God to love each other. And in fact, you do love all of God's family throughout Macedonia. Yet we urge you, brothers and sisters, to do so more and more, and to make it your ambition to lead a quiet life. You should mind your own business and work with your hands, just as we told you, so that your daily life may win the respect of outsiders, and so that you will not be dependent on anybody.
Okay, thank you, brother. Y'all know what a paralipsis is? I get
What's on your face, right?
That's right. I get to pretend like I'm Joshua and teach something about English tonight. Paralipsis is for a figure of speech where a speaker pretends to overlook a subject, but he really doesn't overlook it. He really discusses it. You hear it a lot. I'm not going to talk about da 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 da. Well, you just talked about it. So what Paul does here is he uses paralipsis. I don't need to talk about your love. So tonight he's going to talk about their love. Is basically what he's doing. Now, two things differentiated the Thessalonian church from Thessalonia. One was their call to purity, and we talked about that last week. And the other thing was the depth and the strength of their love. All right. You here in person and you online, I would imagine that all of you have heard more sermons on the different Greek words for love than tonight. The word that we find for love in verse 9 is the genesis of it is Philadelphia type of love. Okay. And this was in the first century. Philadelphia, more often than not, was used for blood relations. It was a love that binds together the children of the same daddy. Paul brings this into the kingdom because we have a common father. And because of that common father, we have these fraternal type of relationships with each other. So he says, well, I don't need to tell you about it, but I'm going to tell you about it. He says, you yourselves have been taught by God to love each other, and in fact you do. So I'm going to urge you, and then he'll expand into Macedonia here in just a moment. and he's going to say, I want you to ratchet your love up a notch. You're loving, I want you to really love, okay? Now, but before we talk about the more and more part, let's talk about this for a minute. Based on what we've talked about the last several weeks, what would be some of the things that would make brotherly love hard in Thessalonica?
Immoral city.
Very much an immoral city. There's natural tension, okay?
Worshiping many gods.
Okay, in the.
Not one God.
Sure, okay, all right. Now let's think about even inside the church. Now that has effects. Sure it does. Okay, David.
I was going to say, isn't it kind of a cultural melting pot? I mean, it's not,
Oh, yeah.
so.
Oh, yeah. And in this church, there are Jewish believers and there are those that came from a pagan background. So remember from last week when we were talking about sexual purity, the Jews are saying, yeah, we've heard that before. And the pagans are like, wow.
What? What concept?
New information. So, there's this tension, natural tension between Jews and Gentiles. There's going to be a natural tension between there are going to be some slaves and there are going to be those who are free. There are going to be Greeks and there are going to be Romans. There are going to be some layers there that are going to, where people naturally with those divisions did not get along. Okay? Go ahead.
I think there might be some envy and jealousy amongst them. You know, I mean, Timothy gave a good report. Paul is telling them, you know, that they're doing, you know, the right things. But, you know, is it everybody, every single solitary person in there that is doing that? And that, you know, could cause some strife, some envy, some jealousy amongst them. And, you know, being so many different factions and so many different, you know, types of backgrounds, you know, I mean, I can't think that there wouldn't be some problems sticking up here and there.
There's this natural human tendency.
Yeah, I think so.
Now, thankfully, human nature has radically changed in 2,000 years, so we're good now. Next obvious question is this. What makes brotherly love hard at Mandarin? What makes it hard here? Need to talk about it because we're a place to love and be loved. We hang our hat on love to be loved and be loved. That's it. What makes it difficult here? Let's go Tom then Richard, or Richard then Tom.
Richard was first.
So that people get their feelings hurt easily.
Sure,
Where,
sure.
you know, oftentimes the root of all sin is about pride. And
Sure.
pride sneaks in everywhere.
Absolutely. So there's the self-protect, self-defense kind of mode when that kind of stuff happens. So there's high level of sensitivity. Because, and I'm gonna come right back to you, Tom, there's an extra level of sensitivity because you're a Christian and you ought to know better. You shouldn't hurt my feelings. Yeah, so go ahead.
I think for the last couple of years, COVID has really affected our brotherly love. It has just placed us apart from each other. It has given us social distance. It made a number of people question, you know, their brothers and sisters, whether, you know, can I shake hands with them? Can I talk with them? Can I embrace them? And without those embraces available from everyone, okay, some people get hurt by the fact that they're not, you know, feel that they're not part of us and they're not able to go ahead and embrace each other. And we have people online. We love everybody in this church and we want to make everybody feel welcome. Those that are live streaming, those that are, you know, online as far as Bible study, on Zoom and everything, they are an intricate part of this church. But not being able to embrace them and shake their hand and ask them personally, you know, how they're doing and being able to speak with them that way, it affects us.
Sure. And I sound like Bill Belichick, it is what it is. It's a condition that does impact, and we have to deal with it. And it, like you just said, multi-layered, from the physical separation to everything going on in the world about it. It's just, you have to work a little harder. Dan?
I think to put it simply, we're too into me.
Oh, boy.
Oh,
That would describe America 2021 about as much well as anything, wouldn't it? Sure. We all love me some me. That's just part of who we are. Now, when I said what makes it hard to love at Mandarin, it makes it hard to love at every other.
Of course.
And I didn't mean to say that like we're unique in any of these things, like we got problems. It's just there are always going to be challenges to brotherly love. Go ahead.
I was just going to point out your message to us on Sunday brings that to home. You got to have that face-to-face confrontation or awareness to create that embrace, whether it's brotherly love or friendship or whatever. It's great that we can see people electronically through
Thank God.
through whatever technology. That's great, but I can see my brother who lives 9 hours away through web technology. That's great. I'm still connected to him, but it's so much better when I can physically touch him and hug him. You know, there's a bond that's brought together, that's built just by being together.
It's a big deal, isn't it?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Gary.
Yeah, and to kind of piggyback on Richard, I think in the church, just like in any other organization, and I'm going to just use that broadly,
Sure.
is you have people who look for the negative.
Sure.
And that's a problem in brotherly love as well.
Sure. And sometimes that's just the way you're wired.
Well, I think another problem, if you want to call it that, is the word brotherly love, in that we shouldn't settle for that. We should be going deeper than that.
To an extent, yeah, sure.
And I don't mean eros.
Yeah,
I mean a God.
I'm tracking with you, yeah. And part of the whole purpose of this passage is take it up a level. Absolutely. You got a lot of things to deal with. The things that you guys have identified, the COVID world, all the trying to filter media messages to discern truth. You've got diversity of background. Quite honestly, some people are easier to get along with than others. I mean, it's just human. It's human nature. It's not so. Paul says this brotherly love, you gotta take it up a notch. And part of the reason he's telling them that is because it doesn't just happen. The natural things in that type of environment is to splinter. We're watching it happen in our country right now. All right. So what takes determination and what takes leading into the Spirit of God and begging for his help is to grow in our love for each other. Casey, did you want to say something? I know. Okay, Mary, I know that you do. Go ahead, Mary.
Another way I can interpret this passage is when he says, do more and more. I think that as brothers and sisters in Christ, that we go that extra mile. When someone asks you to do something, don't just stick because just the basic stuff, but just go an extra, go that extra miles for that person. And then sometimes it takes the sacrifice. We have to sacrifice, our own desires, in order to help one another.
I agree with you, Mary. One extra step. Whole sermon about second mile in Matthew 5, but a little extra. Yeah.
I think we need to remember once again to rejoice in the things that we have and rejoice in the gifts and the grace that we've been given and the opportunities. And, teach our children, grandchildren to rejoice and bring the joy into their lives. And so many individuals, in the world think that, Christians are, just sit around and pray all the time and sing dirges and, and kumbaya.
That's why I joined.
That's the understanding. The understanding of it is, but, it's not that way. We have joy and we have enjoyment in our lives by doing things that are right, that are not illegal, that are wholesome. And we teach our children and our teenagers to do that. And talking to Mike Bennett tonight, he was saying that there's a lot of things that, you don't really normally talk to with teenagers, okay, like sex and other things, but it needs to be said. It needs to be talked about as far as marriage and as far as those type of things that happen, and bring the joy into their lives and let them know that, being a Christian doesn't mean that you're going to be, just singing kumbaya the rest of your life. It means that you're going to live your life, as Jesus Christ.
Go ahead, David. Thank you.
I want to piggyback on something you said before about it takes work. We've been kind of indoctrinated with something that is largely true, and that is that there's strength in diversity, but there's challenge in diversity too. It's not a panacea, and you have to consciously address it.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you said that. Yeah.
Mike, I think brotherly love needs to be applied in all aspects of our life. I have been glad sometimes that I did not have a Mandarin Church of Christ sticker on my car whenever I've been in traffic, and
Not being the best Christian
because
example.
occasionally not being right. So
I'm going to get the outsiders here in just a
That was you, huh?
If you're a bad driver, please don't put praying hands on your car.
You'll see no bumper stickers on my car at all.
No, not going over.
Please. And we're going to come back to, you laid a seed there that we're going to come back and talk about here in just a couple of minutes, Gary. So all of these things make it a challenge. But he does say, in fact, you do love all of God's family. In fact, you love them throughout Macedonia. This is where the circle begins to expand, okay? Because you got your local body, but you've also got your brothers and sisters throughout. Now you got another dimension to your love. It's still brotherly love, but it's brotherly love for, in this context, all of Macedonia. Now, who would you think of as our Macedonia?
The churches in the area.
That's what I would think. Okay.
That's my first thought.
Okay. That was the first thing that popped into my mind, and the second. So,
Well, and non-believers entirely.
yeah, and that part's coming here in verse 11 and 12, that there's a critical part of that we're going to talk about. For our brother and sister churches, how do we express unconditional brotherly love?
We communicate with them. We let them know that we love them. We want to be part of them. And it's up to them, if they want to accept that or not. You can't force it on any church.
That's what Paul says, as much as depends on you.
Absolutely.
we don't talk bad about them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We don't have enough time for friendly fire. There's a battle going on, and we don't need to be shooting each other.
That's taken away all my fun.
Your summer series is a clear example as well. You invite others in.
Sure.
We had all those different speakers come in from different congregations.
Yeah, what a blessing that
Open those
was.
invitations up, yeah.
That was a great, great blessing, I thought.
Involve your young people with their young people.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's important that we mind our own business.
In fact, Paul uses those exact words.
Absolutely.
So we, yeah. And I can brag, one thing I'm grateful for is in my ministry life in Jacksonville, not just here, but in Jacksonville, I have always served under elders who were only interested in shepherding their own flock. And I am eternally grateful for that, because not every preacher has that experience. Richard.
Just tying Gary and Dan's comments together. You know, if we talk about the other churches, we're guilty of gossip, which is the primary thing. And the truth be known, we don't ever really know exactly what has happened there, what the reasoning is or anything else, because we've picked it up in most cases secondhand, or the way someone else from that church sees it.
How they saw it.
And we're just not there. Because it happens right within our own church at times, when decisions are made and people assume they're made for one reason or another. So, but it is our human nature to get involved in other people's business. And I know Dan said it, and I know it's point number 2, and I know it's right here. So obviously in Thessalonica, there had been people very guilty of not minding their own business.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think also we need to, you know, just refrain from boasting about the things that are happening good as far as that. If you want to share, you know, the wonderful things that are happening in the church, that's one thing. But if you talk about how great, you know, things are going, and, you know, and how our finances are doing and all the things that we're accomplishing with, you know, our church, and acting like it's, wow, you know, we're doing well and you guys are not doing well, you know, that causes a lot of hurt feelings and a lot of envy. And it's just something that I've seen in the past, and it's, you know, it's very detrimental. You know, we should rejoice in the things that we have and share that with the other churches around us, but not put ourselves on a pedestal that, you know, okay, we're the model church and you need to do what we're doing.
Look at what God did.
Yeah.
That can go a lot further than look at what God. And be genuine when you say it, not using God for cover so I can talk about myself for the next 10 minutes, but genuinely look at what God did. So we've got Thessalonica, we've got Macedonia. This idea of more and more, by the way, is all through the Thessalonian letter. It's in chapter 3, it's in chapter 4. And several times he encourages them to grow in an area where they're already showing excellence. And let's talk about this one more thing before we get to outsiders. What are some of the tools God can use to cause us to love other people more and more? What kind of tools could God use, does God use to grow our love?
Patience.
Now, if God's going to grow our patience, what's he going to probably do?
Give you challenges.
He's probably going to put something right in front of you that's going to push your patience button.
He's going to give us the opportunity when we speak to someone on the outside, you know, to understand where they're coming from. A lot of times we just want to talk to somebody and start waving the Bible at them and hit them with both barrels and talk about how much they're sinning and how their life is wrong. That is the opposite way that we're supposed to understand people. If you're going to speak with somebody on the outside and give them love, you don't attack them. You know, you speak with them and you listen to what they have to say.
As I say, there's a two-way street, and that's the help street, right? So you might be having a hard time and one of us can help you, and that helps both of us, and then vice versa.
Sure.
I could be in a bad way, and you can end up feeling my love in return for your help, right?
Absolutely.
So that's a huge way that God uses us.
Big deal, David, because both sides. I'm so happy I got to help. I'm so happy I got help.
I think humility fosters love. You know, when you
Always.
think less about yourself, you think more about others.
Absolutely. So for God to give us those lay opportunities before us to consider others. Gail, go ahead.
I think I can love through similar experiences. Yeah, it helps us to relate to others and thereby expressing that love.
I think there's a lot to that, Gail. A shared experience is a big, big deal. All right, so we've got, let's finish with our widest concentric circle. Verse 11, to make it your ambition to lead a quiet life. That's a fascinating phrase. Make it your ambition to not have ambition.
Totally countercultural today.
Yeah, boy, oh boy. About as much so as you can imagine. Now, we don't know for sure if Paul is addressing people who were so hyped up about the second coming that they were not going to work. They were just basically doing nothing, sitting and waiting. He addresses that in 2 Thessalonians. I'm not sure necessarily that's what Paul's talking about here, because a lot of times it's better to use the earlier to interpret the later than the later to interpret the earlier. It seems to me that he's trying to encourage them, if nothing else, just to keep their heads down and not make waves in the public arena, because they're already being persecuted enough. So, and we'll start breaking down the specifics of that. Go ahead.
Well, I've often wondered, so we've all seen that person, and we might have been that person at one point, who was the new believer and how exuberant they are and all that. And often they just want to talk about everything. They don't want to actually do anything, right? And I wonder if in the early days of Christianity, if that was rampant.
Certainly possible. Certainly possible. My Uncle Jack used to call that big hat, no cattle.
I like that. I'm going to remember that.
Let's look at these three, because these are the very specific instructions Paul gave. Lead a quiet life. What does that mean? I know it means what it says, but what does it say then?
Don't be boastful.
Yes.
All right, no reason to be boastful. Okay?
Don't put on a show.
Don't put on a show. Don't be boastful. Don't put on a show.
Useful.
Ooh, a positive one. Usefulness. Be useful. Okay. Usually in a church, the quieter people are the most useful. As far as the behind the scenes kind of stuff that very few people ever know about, things just kind of happen. Richard, go ahead.
Self-control.
In all situations, self-control, okay, is a big part of a quiet life. It's not I don't even know where this term came from. It's not a rabble rouser. It's not a pot stirrer. Not to be contentious, not to be rude. One of the literal translations of that phrase is alarmist. You ever been in a place where there was an alarmist? Church is on fire, metaphorically speaking. So don't be that kind of person. Don't be rude. Now we're going to talk about attention with that in just a minute. Go ahead.
Have forgiveness in your life.
For sure.
Every single person. Do not harbor any ill will or lack of forgiveness for anyone in any situation. Free your heart from any hurt feelings. Work these things out.
Yeah, for them and for you.
Yes.
For them and for you.
Don't be a busybody.
Yeah. And that's going to take us right here, minding your own business. And I'm glad you used that specific phrase because we've got this kind of tension. In a church of brotherly love, of Philadelphia love, a church that's growing toward, that sacrificial agape love, in fact, if for that kind of church to exist, people have to be involved in each other's lives. Okay? So we get involved, but then if we get too involved, are we still minding our own business? We got a tension we got to navigate when we're wanting to be involved, but we're not wanting to be a busybody. All right, does that make sense?
Yes.
I'll draw the line for me then, since it makes sense.
Like, I think, my dad used to always say, or I think it was him who used to always say, some people need just a talking to, but sometimes others just need to get slapped. So, I mean, it was like, sometimes it's a little different just depending on what's going on in a person's life that you're trying to help them with or something.
Sure.
And I think that is imperative sometimes.
Okay. All right.
Well, and I think part of that is also just the person, forgetting about where they are at the moment. Some people will tend to overreact to any kind of input, so you have to really measure it carefully. Other people, you got to shout at the top of your lungs just to have a chance of having them maybe hear you.
So part of this tension is you got to, just like a speaker's got a nose on it, you got to know who you're dealing with. And if you're really family, you'll know who you're dealing with. And you won't be shocked. If you know each other like family. I love this quote from F.F. Bruce. He says, "There's a great difference between the Christian duty of putting the interest of others first and the busybody's compulsive itch to put other people right." So the difference between putting others first and setting people straight. Am I genuinely in this for your best? Go ahead.
I think part of, for me at least, drawing that line, and I'm not saying I'm that good at it, but drawing that line is what will benefit this person or these people the most versus what do I want to do? In other words, I want to make you great, okay, because that'll make me great. No, that's not right, okay? What at this moment does Mike Johnson need, and can I help meet that need?
You can only help somebody as much as they want to be helped.
That's true. That's absolutely true.
Sure.
It is extremely delicate line in a lot of cases. I've seen a lot of things happen. And there have been people before who they just think they can fix everything in everybody else's life. They go in charging without really not knowing all of the details. And sometimes it's hard to get off the details because you're not trying to want to be gossipy and everything else.
Sure.
And trying to pick out. But I think in a lot of cases, all of us sometimes just need to step back before we act and take a good look. And if we're unsure, maybe you reach out, whether it's one of the elders or one of the ministry members, what have you. But I've seen people's feelings in this church and the prior one get extremely hurt by someone who thought they were trying to do
True.
and it's delicate. And the flip side of that is then having to try to sit with the individual who's the bull in the china shop and trying to get them to understand. And then they feel like that they're being reprimanded because they think they're doing.
Sure, they're trying so hard to do good.
It is a fine line. And so probably the best advice is for each and every one of us to be open to what is being said.
And open to receive. We're actually, you set me up for a great commercial. Sunday, when we're talking about hearing God, we're going to be talking about that moment when someone has a word for you, how to discern when it's really from God and when it might not be. And it's not like that's going to be always be perfectly crystal clear, but sometimes it can be. But you are right that is a very, very delicate tension, and stepping back with humility and always being ready to receive and to evaluate as you receive is a big, big deal. Tom, go ahead.
That's what I was gonna say.
Okay. So the last one, work with your hands. Seems to be pretty obvious. Now, the Greeks considered working with your hands to be demeaning work, insulting work. Manual work was slave work. So in this context, this is more of a cultural, when it comes to outsiders, don't be afraid to rub shoulders with them and put your hand to the plow. And don't let your status or their status be a barrier for love to penetrate through that. Very, very important. We all know that people who are not yet disciples of Jesus are watching us and listening to us with varying motives. Some are quite curious. Some are genuinely interested. Some occasionally have a desire to look for that moment of hypocrisy. And if you look at my life long, you only have to look too long. You're gonna find it. In our day and culture, what do you think some of the things that we need to do so that outsiders will be willing to hear the message of Christ? What do they need to see in us so that they'll be willing to hear the message of Christ?
Let us not grow weary of living our lives through the example of Jesus Christ. Let those people on the outside see Jesus in us and be consistent with the things that we do in setting the example as a child of God.
Sure.
Your actions speak louder than your words.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
You know, I was just going to say, the things that we do here amongst our body, we should be doing the same kind of interactions with everybody.
Sure. Sure. Absolutely.
And I think when people see a peace and contentment in you that doesn't mirror the world, that draws them to.
There's not much peace in the world right now.
Nope.
So to see the calm composure, even a quiet joy, that can be very, very intriguing. Who am I missing?
Mary.
Mary, go
And
ahead.
Tom.
Let's go Mary, then Tom.
Okay. I have lived that, Mike, about, live your daily life so that you gain the respect. Because when I work in a workplace, there's 3,000 employees, civilians employed, and military. And so that was like working in a fishbowl. And, and so one of the things I had to make up my mind not to compromise my belief. And another thing I have always prayed that I have a tendency to be more critical, but I have prayed that I see people through Jesus' eyes, look at people. And still today, after I move into this community, I have a whole new set of people, a personality that I'm learning how to, to live around and live with. And so that is so true, to look at and have, what would Jesus do in every situation that I encounter?
Yeah, Mary, that's such good wisdom. Looking at them through a Jesus filter. Gary, I'm sorry, Tom.
Tom.
What people need to see in us is sincerity and have a sincere heart and really be interested in them. A few years back, and something that I've always regretted, Sister Rita brought someone from the recovery group to church. And because of their illness, I avoided them. And I have regretted that for years. And I've wondered what's happened to them. So we have to be sincere with people and interested in them.
Tom, you're so right. And because of the kind of heart God has given you, it became a teachable moment to learn and to grow and to be so transparent, sharing that with us tonight, because we've all had our moments. So I really appreciate you sharing that. So we've got another duality going on. We're going to finish. It's 8:00. In one sense, the Christians got to live without regard to the opinion of the world, because you're trying to please God. You're not trying to please the world. At the same time, we want to have in mind what the world is seeing in us, because we're trying to bring glory and honor to God. So we're naturally dealing with that. So that's the essence of this passage, at least in my view. Next week, we will pick up in verse 13, finish chapter 4, talking about dead people. Actually talking about resurrection stuff next week. Looking forward to that discussion. Let me pray us out. Lord, thank you for the chance to be with each other tonight and to learn and grow from your word. Father, may this previous period not just be words spoken, but lives lived in a way that bring honor and glory to you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
Good night.